Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet Shranvatam swakata krishnaha punyashravana kirtanaha hridiyantah stohi abhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion of the third canto, and we are on chapter. We are actually on chapter 20, which is a conversation between Sri Maitreya and Vidura. And this is a continuation of the conversation. So all of what we have been hearing so far are multiple layers of conversation that have been embedded and that are being shared by different groups of people. So there is the original conversation between Srila Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. And then in the assembly, great personalities had come to hear from Srila Sukadev Goswami. So you had Sri Narad Muni, you had even Vyasadeva sitting in the assembly to hear, and so was the case with Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami was also one of the personalities who was sitting in audience, and he is conducting a second layer of conversation that happens within the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first layer is basically between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit, and the second is between Sutta Goswami and the sages in Naimisharanya at the beginning of Kali Yuga. So right at the onset of Kali Yuga, they meet at Naimisharanya, and they are supposed to basically create the auspiciousness and also set the stage for what is to be discussed and what is the process that is to be cultivated, which is most potent during Kali Yuga. And because they have set it up in the beginning of Kali Yuga, what they basically did was wanting basically to start the Yuga with an advantage. So whatever we do during the beginning of the day, during the beginning of the year, and when I say beginning of the year, I'm not referring to necessarily the New Year's that we celebrate, which is the 1st of January. I'm referring to the Gaur Purnima. So Gaur Purnima, or Gaurabda as we call it, is the new year for us, because that's practically keeping an account for Lord Gauranga's appearance. And every year we celebrate Gauranga's appearance during Gaur Purnima, but that is the beginning of the year. So what is it that is to be achieved? So there's great auspiciousness that is created in that particular moment when we are beginning the year with a grand celebration, with fasting, with a lot of service, and then the next year becomes fortified. So in a similar fashion, to fortify and to ensure that there's an advantage, there is something done right at the beginning of Kali Yuga. So what they did was to choose a process which they believed would be the most appropriate process for Kali. The process they chose is to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is not so much to read or to do anything, it is to hear. And the purpose of hearing, which is being promoted in Srimad Bhagavatam by the action of Sukadev Goswami, who was the greatest speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, he performed the activity of Kirtan to the fullest extent. And then there was the Shravanam, which was done by Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was an extraordinarily attentive listener. So if there is a qualified speaker, then there has to be a very qualified listener. And Parikshit Maharaj played that role of being an extraordinarily qualified listener. He practically did not interrupt Sukadev Goswami for 7 days. And during the time period, he interrupted him appropriately. So he was listening with great intent. And during that time period, he interrupted him appropriately to ask questions. Now, this original conversation was captured by Sutta Goswami, and he's sharing Srimad Bhagavatam right at the onset of Kali Yuga. And this is to make things auspicious. And when we begin a year to make things auspicious, it's wonderful for us to do something like this. And so is the case with beginning the day. So if you were to start with Srimad Bhagavatam, you would be setting the stage for the whole day. If you were to start with Srimad Bhagavatam, sessions of Srimad Bhagavatam, listen to early in the morning, and then we have enough material in our heart for us to be able to meditate and go through the entire day. So this is considered to be an extraordinarily auspicious activity. So Sutta Goswami now is speaking to Shaunaka Rishi and other qualified speakers in Naimisharanya. The conversation they're repeating is between Vidura and Sri Maitreya Rishi. Sri Maitreya Rishi had the good fortune of actually seeing Krishna conduct the disappearance pastime. He was with Uddhava and Krishna when Krishna departed, and he was privy to the conversation that Uddhava and Krishna had, and he was practically given mercy by Krishna's interaction with Uddhava. There was an audience. But then Uddhava was more qualified to speak because in reality, he is a very close relative of Krishna. At the same time, he was also extraordinarily qualified as a great devotee. But then as he approached Mathura, he met with Vidura on the banks of the Mathura. And after meeting with Vidura on the banks of Mathura, he practically was not able to speak. He was not able to speak because of grief. He was practically not able to speak because of grief. And he was able to give Vidura a sense of the departure of the Lord. And I was just wanting to remind everyone that even though Sri Uddhava could have spoken, he knew that Maitreya Rishi was in proximity. And he wanted to practically set aside and move aside so that Maitreya Rishi could be the speaker, because Maitreya Rishi was the senior devotee in that vicinity. So there is a culture of what we would call as being subservient and wanting to encourage and being able to basically play a role of encouraging devotees who are older, they're senior, and then he basically wanted to step aside and allow Vidura to listen from Maitreya Rishi. We have spoken about all of this in the past, but then the chapter starts with Vidura being glorified by Sutta Goswami. Now, he is being glorified, and it is being said that Sri Vidura had exhausted all his passion by moving around in the sacred places. So by doing parikrama, Sri Vidura had exhausted all the sinful reactions of interacting with the Kauravas. So he practically played the role of a minister. So when you play the role of a minister of an extraordinarily sinful government, then there is the karmic reaction that is being carried upon him. So he practically wanted to walk away and he wanted to do parikrama. So he did parikrama, and by doing the parikrama, he practically was able to exhaust the passion. But how did he exhaust the passion? He exhausted the passion by coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam being spoken by Maitreya Rishi. Because Maitreya Rishi practically spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Sri Vidura, and Vidura exchanged notes with him. In other words, he was inquiring very submissively. And Sri Vidura was not an ordinary personality. He was the son of Srila Vyasadeva. He was the son of Srila Vyasadeva. So there is a qualification. Even though even Dhritarashtra and Pandu were sons of Srila Vyasadeva, Vidura had a qualification of being the son of Vyasadeva, and he was also the personification of Dharma. So there was many wonderful qualities about him. And he practically sat with Maitreya Rishi and heard Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is how he exhausted his passion. He exhausted the contact that he had with situations and circumstances and samskaras that were highly inauspicious for devotional service by engaging in the activity of Shravanam. So Shravanam of Srimad Bhagavatam is given such a high position in our scriptures, and especially if it is done in a very orderly way and it is being studied carefully, then you have the opportunity for us to practically be able to relieve ourselves of all kinds of challenges. So this is being given as an example that he went on pilgrimage, but the purpose of pilgrimage is not so much to take a dip in the Ganga, Sri Ganga Devi, or dip in Yamuna Ji. The idea is to be able to meet sadhus who have the ability to share Krishna Katha. So he practically met Maitreya Rishi with the purpose of being able to hear Krishna Katha even though he was already cognizant because he was a great devotee. He was a great devotee. Now, what is being said to us is that Bhagavatam and the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam should be given great emphasis. If you want to set the stage for the future, then this is the way to go, because this is practically the most practical way, and it's easy for us to be able to listen and to purify ourselves, because there would be the sound vibrations of Srimad Bhagavatam are so potent that they have the ability to practically relieve us. Now, we need to understand that if Vidura needs to relieve his passion, what about us? You see, we are operating in the material world. Some of us are operating in the West, in the Western world. And when you're interacting with the Western world, where the name of Krishna is not found, they don't have a devotional culture. So you don't really come in touch with devotional culture easily in the West. And then the organizations that we work for and we get compensated from, they don't have the objective of at some point or the other being able to, what I would call as act according to the will of the Lord. They have their own agenda and they practically promote their agenda. And that agenda is practically predicated on passion and ignorance. So we are very, very profoundly in touch with passion and ignorance when we are in the West. And so is the case with India. But I'm just referring to the fact that there's a distinction that in India, you do come across quite a few opportunities for devotional service in a greater level if you are inclined to than you would in the West if you don't have Sangha. Without Sangha, the West is basically an extraordinarily dangerous place because you would accumulate a lot of samskaras. So one needs to realize that our business in devotional service is to practically position ourselves so that we could build Sukriti. The Sukriti, Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti, because there is Karma Unmukha Sukriti and there is Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti. Karma Unmukha Sukriti is when in the previous lifetime, we have made some donations. In the previous lifetime, there has been some kind of donation made for some kind of a purpose. Some kind of service has been done for helping others, helping the needy. These are all activities that we generally see being promoted as activities that are good. And we should never disturb those activities, because being charitable and being able to sacrifice what you have done in favor of those who are unfortunate is this is basically a sign of people being a little selfless. So we shouldn't disturb it unless we are able to give faith where they're able to move forward and do something even more profound. So we do not want to disturb arrangements unless we are able to anchor people in the world with something superior, or we are able to give an alternative which is very clear to them where they could move forward. So we should not discourage charity if someone is engaging in charity unless we can give an alternative and they're ready to perform the charity and they've developed the faith. So the point is there is Karma Unmukha Sukriti, which is happening around the world. So you notice people who have the ability to produce wealth, they have the ability to fulfill their karma. Because once you follow dharma itself is the objective of, let's assume that it is quoted with the objective of karma kanda. So the idea is to engage in fruitive action. And when they engage in fruitive action, they develop sukriti. They develop sukriti, or what we should call as credits, pious credits, punya, we call it in Sanskrit as well. And when they accumulate this, the next lifetime, they have the ability to spend that just as we would spend money from a wallet. Yeah. In the next lifetime, they have the ability to spend what has been accumulated just as much as we would spend money from a wallet. If you don't have money in the bank, then you don't have the ability to offer, or you don't have the ability to spend. Yeah, you just don't have the ability to spend. In other words, the idea of being able to what we would call as spend money has to be preceded by us being able to accumulate money in the bank. Yeah, it is not possible for us to spend unless you already have it. So there are people who have resources that have been accumulated from the previous lifetime. These resources themselves are sukriti that has accumulated. They use the sukriti based on how they are encouraged to use the sukriti. So they're basically impelled by their senses to engage in activity, and they have the resources for them to be able to spend, and then for them to be able to move forward in engaging in, activities. They have the ability to say that we desire, and then because we desire and we have the facility, we also have the ability to fulfill our desires. So this is not quite normal. It is not something which everybody can do, because many of us do struggle where we can't really act upon what we want or what we desire simply because we don't have the currency to do so. When I use the word currency, I'm talking about Sukriti. So the issue is that there is desire of the individual entity, and then there has to be Sukriti. Both have to combine. And then the third factor is that there has to be a blessing of the Lord in terms of time. Yeah. So the time factor, which is above in the sky, also has to cooperate for the activity to be concluded. So you have many factors for the success of activities. Now, the accumulation of Sukriti is basically manifest in terms of facilities for people to realize what they desire. If they have a desire, they have the ability to fulfill it. This requires wealth in the form of subtle accumulation. This is not gross. Gross wealth is the end result. It is not the beginning. Gross wealth is the end result. Subtle wealth is the beginning. And because there's a subtle wealth, because the subtle wealth has been accumulated, and the subtle wealth itself has the ability to produce gross wealth. So the first and foremost principle is subtle wealth. So the whole body of Vedic knowledge focuses on the accumulation of subtle wealth. So the whole objective of karma, kanda, fruitive activity, is to perform one sacrifice or the other, perform a certain kind of charity, please one kind of personality or the other. And this in turn would result in the ability to spend. So this will result in the ability to spend. So it is all a matter of us being able to spend. So how do you spend if you do not have subtle currency? So the Vedas practically, they have created a system where one would be able to accumulate Sukriti. They can accumulate Sukriti. This is basically the system. So it's quite, I would say, an interesting combination where you have an entire body of knowledge which practically focuses on the accumulation of credits so that one could fulfill karma. So there is dharma. And what is dharma? Dharma is the engagement of activities as glorified in the Vedas. Do this sacrifice, do that sacrifice, chant this mantra, chant that mantra, and you have an end result. This is dharma. Now, once you perform that dharma, one accumulates artha. Artha is the resources. Artha, in the Vedic sense, is the subtle availability of credits that can be readily manifest as physical currency. This is a very simple concept. And then once you have artha, then you have the ability to fulfill kama. This is the sequence. Now, the point I want to just make here is that we are discussing the positioning of people for the purpose of accumulation of credits, because the subtle credits are useful to be used for the purpose of something else in the future. Now, what is important for us to realize is that as devotees, we have a similar objective. Not so much a similar objective in terms of wanting to accumulate subtle credits, not so much a similar objective in terms of wanting to accumulate subtle credits. That is not the objective of the devotee, for us to be able to enjoy and engage in sense gratification. But we also need a certain kind of Sukriti. The Sukriti that the devotee is dependent on is called Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti. There's a need for Sukriti. There's a need for spiritual credits for us to be able to lay out a foundation so that we could move forward. So the concept is similar. The Karma Kanda of the Vedas encourage devotees, encourage the followers of the Karma Kanda faith to engage in activity which would produce a certain kind of credit which they could encash in fulfilling their desires. Similarly, Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti is accumulated as spiritual credits that would allow us to advance very rapidly. So we notice that some devotees, they join the movement, and then within a space of a very short time, you find them accelerating in their bhakti process. You find them accelerating, you find great realizations coming forth. You find them extraordinarily serious. They're making all kinds of sacrifices to position themselves for even greater accumulation of spiritual credits. It's practically, they're positioning themselves to even advance, and they're ready to make all kinds of sacrifices. They're ready to give up this and give up that so that they could practically focus. Now, this particular focus is not an accident. It is not a random event. When you observe an individual who is extraordinarily focused, and you observe them right from the start in a very short duration of time, they go from coming into the movement to getting initiated, and then boom, they are just taking off like a rocket. While then you find someone else who has been in the movement, they've also been initiated, but then they spend so many years just trying to steady themselves for the purpose of advancement. There are those who practically are a part of the movement, but they stay in the periphery, not wanting to commit. They don't even get into the movement. They are in the periphery. They are in the periphery. They would render some level of service, but they don't want to make a commitment because they're just afraid of commitments, and they're very afraid or not sure of what is the outcome. What is it that I'm supposed to give up? What if I have to give up things that I really love doing? Maybe if I get initiated or if I move forward, then I have to sacrifice this and I have to sacrifice that. I remember 30 years back, there was an initiation ceremony, and there was one devotee who was pretty young, and then he was very, very disturbed and agitated before. And this was a time when pizza parlors and Pizza Huts and so on were quite rare. And he was just basically confiding in me, saying, I would never be able to go to Pizza Hut. So I found it quite amusing several years later that this is an extraordinarily small obstacle, because there are so many wonderful devotee cooks who make wonderful pizza. But I was saying, I'm just giving an example, that these are the kind of thoughts which people have, which actually prevent them from taking up a commitment, that they practically feel that they can't go and engage in sense gratification at some level. This is sense gratification. So why is it that you have such a variegated body of devotees? You have one which is accelerating rapidly, then you have one who is struggling even though they are moving forward with commitment, and then you have one who practically is not wanting to commit, and then you have one who stays in the periphery. They visit like a tourist. They're not practically committed, they're not a part of the country, they just come and visit and then they leave. So you have this extraordinarily variegated group of devotees. And why is it so? This is due to the fact that the level of bhakti unmukha sukriti differs from devotee to devotee. What they have accumulated from one lifetime to the other, there's a big difference. So you have Ado Shraddha, so there is the faith-giving process. The Guru is giving faith to everyone, isn't he? So when you have a devotee come who is very senior, who is carrying a lot of faith in their heart, when they speak, the sound vibrations are entering into our ears. And then those sound vibrations have the ability to create a certain sense of peace in our heart, or lay a foundation of bhakti in our heart. And then upon this foundation, you keep building upon it. But the devotee who comes and who speaks, he's speaking to 50 people in the room. How many of them are receiving it and then accelerating, and they are able to take it up and drop everything? How many of them are staying in the periphery? So the mercy, Ado Shraddha, Shraddha is being given equally, which means the sound vibration that is coming in is the opportunity is equal. Yeah. The opportunity is equal. The mercy of Lord Nityananda is equal. However, what is being received variegates based on the sukriti that has been accumulated. Because there are different class of devotees and different groups of devotees, different people who sit in the particular room are hearing the same class. They're hearing the same Shraddha movement, the movement where Shraddha is being given, because the senior Vaishnava is carrying experiences in their heart. They're seeing the divine couple. They are seeing the divine couple dance. And when they see the divine couple dance, they're seeing the divine couple and directly serving them because they are in prema. And even though they are in a body which is material, they have the ability to actually go through experiences that are quite profound. Those experiences practically are faith. When they speak, the sound vibration travels across and then goes into the room and injects each and every one into their ears. This is Ado Shraddha. But then how much of the Shraddha can be captured depends on the Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti that has been accumulated, because the heart has to be fertile for the Shraddha to be captured and for the bija, the seed of bhakti, to be sown deep inside, and the plant of bhakti to grow and then to flower and to bloom and to blossom and to thrive. This is a big difference. So the biggest issue that we should focus on, and this is a practical issue, is how do you accumulate Sukriti? Because in this particular chapter, Sri Vidura is practically going around on a pilgrimage and meeting sadhus and rendering some service. What is he doing? He is practically accumulating Sukriti. And with that Sukriti, instead of desiring a material outcome, he is practically destroying the passion that is accumulated with coming in touch with the Kauravas. Because he has this karma, prarabdha, that he has accumulated by coming in touch with a negative source, which is Dhritarashtra and his sons working for them. So when you have this particular circumstance of him coming in and practically being able to come in touch and being able to basically what we would call as when he comes in touch with passion and ignorance, then he is contaminated by the passion and ignorance. And Sri Vidura is practically relieving that passion and ignorance. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Yes. He's practically relieving it by coming on a pilgrimage, and then he's practically sitting with the sadhus and receiving the sound vibrations. And he's not desiring any other outcome. He just wants to be rid of all of this so that he could focus. So this is an extraordinarily important lesson for us as devotees, that we need to have a focus of what is the goal, but we also need to have a focus that we need resources. Without resources, you can't accomplish anything. If you cannot accomplish anything in the material world without resources, so is the case with the spiritual world as well. You need resources for us to be able to make advancement and rapid advancement. How do you accumulate resources? Because Sri Vidura practically went on a pilgrimage. He burnt his passion because he had a singular objective of wanting to focus on bhakti. And he wanted basically to focus on the objective of devotional service. He practically rejected everything else. And when he went on that pilgrimage, he did not desire anything else, but he desired to be rid of all the obstacles towards bhakti. Then he meets different people. Krishna arranges when someone is sincere. He's meeting Sri Uddhava. He's meeting Maitreya Rishi. And then he's relieving himself completely. The heart is becoming particularly clean, practically. He's ridding himself of everything. And then the transcendental the conversation between Sri Vidura and Maitreya Rishi is extraordinarily powerful and transcendental, because now Vidura is relieved of all of the influences of being in touch with Neshins, being in touch with the Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana and others. And now he is in touch with sadhus. So we should have a clear understanding that we should accumulate Sukriti, Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti, but we should also strategize for it. We do not want to go with the assumption that I'm not feeling very good about what I'm doing. You see, I'm chanting, but I don't feel very good about my chanting. I'm trying my best. I don't feel very good about my chanting. I go to the temple and then I come back. I don't feel that I have really done much. The point I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter. Any service that is being rendered, and if you have a focused idea of being able to offer our limbs in service to Krishna, we will accumulate Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti. Spiritual credits are extraordinarily important. How do you accumulate it? You accumulate it through service. Yeah, you accumulate it by coming in touch with Krishna through service. You accumulate it through the process of chanting japa. You accumulate it by directly coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. Now, we may not be able to experience the ultimate result of what is being intended in that particular activity. The ultimate result is us being in love and being able to surrender and then being able to offer ourselves in service. This is bhakti. Bhakti means service, but bhakti requires love as a prerequisite, and it requires surrender as a prerequisite. We may not be able to do exactly this because the level of faith that we already have come in touch with at this time may not be enough. In other words, we do not come with what we would call as the prerequisite for a large amount of faith to descend and for us to be able to move forward. We may just have the prerequisite, or rather the spiritual credits, for us to take some advantage. So the point I'm trying to make is, regardless of how you feel, we should engage in the process of devotional service, because we will be accumulating spiritual credits from one lifetime to another. This is the fundamental difference between devotees who excel and devotees who cannot excel and they struggle. The devotees who excel have spiritual credits. It has all been accumulated over several lifetimes. Devotees who are struggling are somewhat new. So what should be the objective in the week? What should be the objective of the day? What should be the objective of the month, the year? And what should be the objective of life? We should practically offer ourselves in full participation in devotional service so that we are able to accumulate the spiritual credits, because that particular activity, Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti, is going to give us the solid foundation for us to accelerate in the subsequent birth, if not this birth. It will help us accelerate in this particular birth as well. But if not, you're going to carry it forward, because that's the difference between those who accelerate and those who don't. So then you have those who receive the Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti and who have a good foundation. They've already accumulated all of this through their extensive level of service. They have sacrificed so much. They have they have given a lot. And then by doing so, they come with a foundation which is solid. When they come with a foundation which is solid, they're able to accelerate. So the point I'm trying to make is that the Ado Shraddha then allows one to engage in Bhajana Kriya. So if we are having difficulty in Bhajana Kriya, which means that our ability to capture the faith that's been given to us is deficient because we don't have enough spiritual credits. What should we do? We should do what Sri Vidura did. We should not only, I'm not referring to the fact that we should all go to Mayapur and Vrindavan, go for parikrama. That's the most beneficial activity, especially if you're able to listen. If you can't listen, if you can't hear from someone who already has Vrindavan and Mayapur in their heart, and they're able to transfer the realizations into our heart, then coming to Braja and coming to Mayapur and just going around as a tourist is not going to help. So I'm not just saying that's what is needed to be done. I'm saying that when we go out to our temples, when we go out on book distribution, when we go out on any kind of service, many occasions of austerity would present itself to us. Do not be intimidated by the austerity, because you are accumulating Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti. You are laying a foundation that is going to allow the reception of faith, which would allow us to engage in Bhajana Kriya into a much greater degree. When our Bhajana Kriya becomes very profound, then we have the ability to remove the anarthas, which is what Sri Vidura did. What is an anartha? Anartha is passion. Abhadreshu. Yeah. Nashta prayeshu, abhadreshu. What is abhadra? Inauspiciousness, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, is passion and ignorance. What did Sri Vidura do? He practically was able to dissolve his passion and ignorance. There was no ignorance, there was passion, because he was in touch with passionate people. He practically dissolved and threw away what is considered to be inauspicious, and he sat with the exalted devotees. So then we have the ability to engage in Bhajana Kriya, which will result in anartha nivarti quite profoundly. Anarthas are nothing but passion and ignorance, manifestations of passion and ignorance, different manifestations. And then those anarthas get taken care of very profoundly if you already have Bhajana Kriya, which is very strong. But the Bhajana Kriya, for it to be very strong, Ado Shraddha, the foundation has to be strong. For the foundation to be received profoundly and for us to be able to act upon it, we need to have spiritual credits. That spiritual credit accumulation is, again, a cycle. It's a process. You go to the temple, you render some service. You may not be happy with the circumstance. And I'm just giving a general answer. I'm not saying it's the case everywhere. You may not be happy with the circumstance. We may not feel good after waking up in the morning and chanting a japa. We may not feel good by doing things that we believe should help in devotional service. But please remember that each and every time you're engaging in any of this, you're accumulating spiritual credits if it is at least done sincerely. If the intention is sincere, which is what Sri Vidura's intention was, it was very sincere, then we have the ability to accumulate spiritual credits. If you can accumulate spiritual credits, then you have the ability to receive faith at a very great level. And if you have the ability to receive a greater level of faith when you come in touch with aspects of devotional service, then you have the ability to do Bhajana Kriya very deeply. When your Bhajana Kriya is very, very deep, then When bhajana kriya is very, very deep, then you have the ability to get rid of the anarthas. When you have the ability to get rid of the anarthas, then you become fixed. This is nishta. What is nishta? Nishta is also called guru nishta, where we have the ability to become extraordinarily fixed in the service of the guru who has practically come from the heart. The spiritual master is a manifestation of the super soul. So he is appearing in a physical form and we are practically serving him. So nishta is being fixed in the service of the guru. This is one understanding or one definition. And another understanding, another definition is the fact that nishta itself is knowing who we are. The sambandha that we have with Krishna has become revealed. If we know who we are in Krishna's world, and this comes in different degrees to different people. This is again a matter of how far they have advanced in the previous lifetime. If someone has advanced in the previous lifetime to knowing their position with Krishna, in this lifetime you will find them going from Ado Shraddha to Bhajana Kriya to Anatta Nivritti very, very fast and rapidly after initiation. And you will suddenly find that they are fixed in knowing who they are in relationship with Krishna. And this is not an ordinary circumstance, which means you can't really make it up. If you look into the mirror very sincerely, you are someone in this world because of the body. You're also someone because of your relationship with Krishna. That position of knowing who we are in relationship with Krishna, you can't pretend because there really isn't any pretense. Krishna is in the heart, he would know it. So the point I'm trying to make here is that one who knows this particular position would act according to the knowledge, because all activity that occurs in this world is based on who we know. In other words, if I know that I'm male, then I'm going to act in that particular position. If I know I'm a father, then there's a certain kind of duty, there's a certain kind of interaction. If I know that I am in a woman's body and then I'm a mother, then I have a certain kind of interaction. So the point I'm trying to make is knowing who we are, the sambandha with the world, sambandha or connection with others around us is practically setting the stage for planning the future. This is the case with everything we do. If you know who you are very well and what your duties are in the office, then you will be able to perform well. If you do not realize what the responsibilities of the position are in the office, it means that you haven't understood that particular identity well. And as a consequence, there's going to be some inefficiency that's going to creep in. So the point I was just wanting to make is that Nishta, reaching Nishta after Anatta Nivritti, all the nonsense has been removed, is a transition that can vary in the number of years a devotee has to commit based on how much they have already done. Based on how much they have already done. This is very important. Based on how much they have already done, they would be able to accelerate. Someone may take an entire lifetime, someone may take a few years in this lifetime because they've already accomplished and walked the distance in the previous lifetime. So we need to understand that our objective in Krishna consciousness is multifold. We are not wanting to be focused so much on the result. We are wanting to be focused on the activity. When you wake up in the morning, start focusing on the activity. What is a service that I can do? I am in a certain community. What has been given to me? How much can I do? The more we do, the more we accumulate. The more we accumulate, better our position is, because then we would be able to take off when the time comes, because the opportunity for taking off is directly connected to the sukriti that's been given. Yes. So Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti is directly a result of us being able to act in Bhakti. We accumulate the good credits. The credits are being accumulated. The passion and the ignorance is being destroyed. We're getting to know who we are. So there's a greater level of sambandha. So we need to understand the process of accumulating credits. Do not ever think that there's any wastage in this movement. There isn't. You go into the temple and any kind of seva that we do, any opportunity for seva, it is directly going to result in setting a good foundation for us to be able to accelerate either in this lifetime or the next, because without that foundation, without spiritual credits, we are weak. We don't have the ability to move forward. Yeah. We don't have the ability to move forward. So an opportunity has been given, that is Ado Shraddha. How much of it are we able to capture? How much of it is going into the heart? And how much of it are we able to enact in the world? This is something that we need to really contemplate, because we get so caught up. We get so caught up with the experience. There's devotees who get caught up with the experience. I don't feel good about my chanting. which means that they are not feeling too good when they chant. So it's almost as if that I will only chant if I feel good about it. So I'm saying the feeling good factor, keep it to the side, focus on the process, because you are setting yourself up for a bright future. Think about it that way. You are contributing a foundation for the bright future. You're contributing to a circumstance where you would have the ability to take on a greater level of faith. Because if you notice over the years, some of you who have been in the movement for years, you'll notice that Srimad Bhagavatam, when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives you a different understanding each and every time you pick up the book over a period of years. So if you've been very sincere and you've been chanting year after year, the Shraddha improves. Because the faith is improved, the ability to understand Krishna, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, it increases. And this is because there has been a particular process of destruction of passion and ignorance. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. Abhadreshu has been removed. This is because there has been an accumulation of spiritual credits. So there's been an accumulation of spiritual credits that has particularly destroyed passion and ignorance. And as a consequence, the devotee is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger in their ability to be able to contribute. Yeah, they're becoming very strong in their ability to contribute. So this is very important for us to understand that when we go to the temple, we don't want to kind of have a mindset that this is an ordinary experience. You are practically setting the stage for the future. And the more sincere we are in being able to render the service, the closer our ability to be able to accept what is being given to us and for us to be able to accumulate and lay a foundation. This is what is being read in this chapter. In this chapter, particularly, there are some very frightening examples. We started with Sri Vidura. We started with Sri Vidura of him being able to get rid of his passion. Why was he able to get rid of his passion? Was this a random occurrence that someone goes on a pilgrimage and then they meet Maitreya Rishi, they meet Sri Vidura? The answer is no. Sri Vidura had so much sukriti that he had the ability to arrange for himself to meet with great personalities on pilgrimage, and he could burn the karmic reactions so easily. Passion and ignorance is karmic reactions. These are karmic reactions. This is sin personified. This is abhadreshu. Yeah. So the point we are trying to make here is that in this chapter, in addition to Sri Vidura being able to burn, what is noticed is that Lord Brahma, when he's engaging in the process of creation, he practically creates bodies based on his mindset as well. If he is deeply in passion, then a certain kind of individual is produced. A living entity is produced. A subtle body which is produced is of a certain nature. A gross body that is produced of a certain nature. If he is in the mode of goodness, then he is able to do something of a different type. So the point we are trying to make is that different bodies have different propensities and different abilities for us to be able to enact in devotional service. Some bodies, they are not particularly favorable because they struggle with the passion and ignorance to a greater degree than someone without that particular affliction does. So we need to come to terms with the fact that in this lifetime, we are fortunate enough to come in touch with devotional service. We are fortunate enough to have a body that is cooperating to some level. It may not cooperate all the time, but to some level, there is some cooperation. Some level, there has been an opportunity for us to make the right decision in coming in touch with the movement and to receive faith. There's been a right decision for us to be able to render service. We are not questioning what's coming our way. This is an opportunity which is quite rare if we read further into this chapter, where Lord Brahma is practically in a certain state of mind, and based on when the soul has to come in, and when the soul has left the body and what kind of aspirations they have, they receive a certain kind of body. And the more gross the body is, in other words, the greater the level of passion and ignorance while existing on the planet, they get a body which is of a similar nature in the subsequent birth. And that body is not going to help us engage in devotional service. If we are having trouble with our body in this lifetime, we should perform the austerity of controlling our senses, offering our senses in service to the Lord, and then being able to purify ourselves just as Sri Vidura did. because this opportunity may not come again. We may receive a body that is less cooperative compared to this. So the idea is that if you have an opportunity for us to be able to accumulate credits, go for it. Because without credits, you cannot dislodge passion and ignorance. So there are two-step process. You need to set a goal, and the goal is for us to develop a deeper level of faith so that we are able to enact devotional service in a manner where Krishna is pleased, Guru is pleased. To receive such faith and for that faith to flourish, there has to be accumulation of devotional credits. Those devotional credits and spiritual credits are themselves the product of service, the product of coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, the product of coming in touch with the deity, and so on and so forth. We accumulate that foundation. If you have a proper desire of wanting to accelerate in combination with those spiritual credits, then we have the ability to make some serious progress in our bhakti in this lifetime and in the next. So when we have a body which has its defects, we all have bodies with defects, of different kinds of defects. I'm referring to the subtle body. The gross body has no function. The subtle body energizes the gross body, and the gross body does what it is supposed to do. The gross body also is being purified and coming in touch with Krishna. But the subtle body is what I'm referring to. If the subtle body of a certain nature where it's not agitated, it is somewhat calm, and we are able to enact certain things, then we should accept this with gratefulness. We should just accept this with gratefulness. This is very important for us to understand that this is an opportunity for us to basically accept this with gratefulness and then be able to act it out so that we could accumulate a good quantity of spiritual credits that could help us in this lifetime. It could also help us in the subsequent lifetime, because we notice devotees who have been helped. There are devotees who join the movement and they get initiated. They go all the way to Ananta Nivritti and beyond within a few short years, and they become examples. There are those who struggle. There are those who stand in the periphery. There are those who just are tourists. They visit and they leave. So we fall into the category of being able to establish ourselves in good faith. But this is going to require effort. This is going to require some hardship in terms of engaging in service, engaging in chanting, engaging in all of these, with the objective, then knowledge that none of this is a waste of time. We may not feel wonderful about everything, but none of this is a waste of time, because we will be able to accumulate credits that would allow us to accumulate even more credits in the future. So it's practically a circumstance where we need to understand that to destroy passion and ignorance, one needs to have very high spiritual potency. That spiritual potency comes due to practice of devotional service. And the practice of devotional service, even though it may not give us results right away, we are accumulating credits, and as a consequence, we are making progress that is quite steady. So we should have faith in the words of the Guru. We should have faith in the predecessor acharyas of how they have demonstrated by being dedicated to the process for years, because there's a long-term process. You're dedicating yourself for 40 plus years, 50 years for you to complete the sadhana, sometimes more than one lifetime. But then there is no loss, there is no diminution, because of the fact that you practically are accumulating credits that would allow you to move forward. And we have seen that. Haven't we seen it? We have seen it in our movement. There are young devotees who take off. There are old devotees who struggle, who have spent many, many years. So there is such variegatedness. It's not a random occurrence. So we need to understand that this is the reason, this is a result of accumulating spiritual credits. So we should be very careful in thinking about what we are gaining when we walk into an environment filled with devotees. We are gaining immensely. We may not recognize it because we don't have the ability to, but we're gaining immensely. So I was just wanting to convey that. I'm going to stop with this message, and we will finish this chapter subsequently in the next call, which is next week. This is chapter 20. I would request you to come with some participation. Come with after some reading. Chapter 20 of Canto 3. This would allow you to participate. This would allow you to ask questions of a much more profound, deep nature. And I would be happy, because it will be encouraging for me as well, if there is some reading that is done before coming for the class. And we would do the entire chapter next week, because this whole chapter is about Lord Brahma going through different phases of passion and sometimes even ignorance, where he's giving up that body on the advice of the Lord, because whatever he has created is ready to devour him. So this is his position. So the point is Where are we going to position ourselves in the next round? We have to be careful because we may receive something which may not help us. There are so many people struggling with different difficulties in executing devotional service because they don't have enough spiritual credits. And number two, they have complicated bodies. They have complicated bodies which have accumulated passion and ignorance, and they're not able to move forward that easily. So what is the solution for them? The same solution which has been given to everybody else. You associate, there's sadhu sangha, so there's an opportunity for Srinvatam, Swakata Krishnaha, then you chant Namasmaranam, Namakirtanam, then you hear Bhagavat Shravanam, then after that you render service to the deity, and then you develop the ability to come to the Dham and you roll in the dust of Sri Vrindavan Dham, and you roll in the dust of the lotus feet of the devotees. Remember, when you go to Mayapur, when you come to Vrindavan, each and every particle of dust could have been trampled upon by Lord Chaitanya, by Lord Nityananda. Here in Vrindavan, if you go down the Parikrama Marg, there is Seva Kunj, and Seva Kunj is where Shri Radha Damodar Mandir is, which is where the samadhis of Srila Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami Pad and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. The samadhis are in the Radha Damodar temple compound. And as you go there, from the Parikrama Marg, there is an opportunity to enter into what we call Shringar Vatika. And this is where Krishna used to decorate Srimati Radharani. He used to decorate, he used to practically assist her in beautifying herself by combing her hair and so on and so forth. This is basically Shringar Vat. It is on the banks of the Yamuna, but it is on the way, it is in Seva Kunj. Lord Nityananda first appeared there and he spent time in that area. Now imagine coming to a place like this and rolling in the dust and you're paying obeisances. What are the odds that a particle of dust that has touched the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga, it has touched the lotus feet of Lord Nitai, it has touched the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, is actually on our forehead? The odds are almost 100%. The odds are almost 100%. Yeah, this is a high probability event where you come to a place as sacred as Sri Vrindavan Dham, you're rolling in the dust and your head is practically paying obeisances, and Lord Nitai's dust could be there. This is reality. This is spiritual reality. What happens if you receive the sukriti of coming in touch with a particle of dust that has been touched the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, touched the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani? It's unimaginable spiritual benefits, unimaginable. But then, what is the sukriti of people being able to come and then do that and recognize it and roll? We can get distracted. You come here and you will see pigs going by. You will see dogs going by. You will see monkeys of different kinds and so on and so forth. You will see some bad behavior from people around you. There are so many distractions. So what is the sukriti here? What is the sukriti? That requires sukriti as well. There has to be spiritual credits for someone to come and not be able to be influenced by the environment. They're able to transcend themselves of the material covering, which is very thin, and they're able to roll in the dust, and then able to take the dust, and they're able to become very fortunate. This requires sukriti. The point I'm trying to make is all of this is a quality of faith that is in the heart. It varies from devotee to devotee. It varies because of what they have already accumulated. So our objective should be to be like treasure hunters. We want to be constantly on the lookout for opportunities for us to be able to collect more and more. Yeah. So we want to be very careful in thinking that our connection with the movement is ordinary. We don't want to assume that going to the temple, rendering some service is ordinary. We are practically setting ourselves up for the future. This is what Srila Prabhupada did. He practically created different parts of the world. He created temples, he created sanghas. And these sanghas themselves have practically energized the whole world. When you walk down Vrindavan these days, you find people, all kinds of devotees come here wearing shorts and holding on to their bead bag and walking around. And you will realize that this is all Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Yeah, this is all Srila Prabhupada's mercy. These are all young devotees. What I'm saying is I'm not talking about them wearing shorts. I'm just wanting to say that they may not basically act in a manner which may look like they are very, they've been practicing for long, but they have practically come here and they are holding onto the bead bag along with who they are, their identities. This is Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Yeah? This is Srila Prabhupada's mercy. The point I'm trying to make is that our temples themselves are opportunities. We should go in with that mood. And yes, there are difficulties. Yes, there are challenges. But that's an opportunity for us to get rid of our own false ego and to submit ourselves to the environment and for us to be able to move forward. So I'm just going to stop here and I'm going to take questions and any question at all. There's a question here. Yeah, this Mataji is writing, I feel very attached to my japa and feel guilty after completing my rounds as I have other material duties to attend. What should I do as not to feel guilty? You don't need to do anything. This is wonderful. If you feel guilty that you're not able to do more and more and more, it's a positive experience. So don't do anything. Let it be intact. Don't do anything. Let it just remain as it is. Let the guilt increase so that you will find ways and means for you to participate. I've always given the example of Hladini Mataji, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She's a great inspiration. Someone who basically single-handedly used to be the pujari of Jagannath Baldev Subhadra in New Vrindavan. From 3 o'clock in the morning right till 9 o'clock in the night, she used to be on a singular pujari duty. Now, during such a time, she has to cut vegetables, she has to make the preps for the afternoon, prep for the morning, prep for the evening, prep for the night, 4 different kinds of offerings. And every time she's doing pujari duty, she doesn't have the ability to chant because she's overwhelmed. Now, the example here is that someone is already doing things that are just directly connected to Krishna's service. They don't have time to chant. What she used to do, and this is an extraordinary person, so she used to hang the beads in front of her while engaging in other activities. And she would just count the beads and complete her rounds whilst doing other things, even though she wouldn't be able to chant using her hands. She would keep different books open in different areas of the temple so that when the milk is boiling, when the deity's offering is going on, she would read a couple of pages. This is how she used to manage. So the more intense we are in terms of wanting to keep in touch and more determined we are, greater would be our ability to do so because Krishna would give us the intelligence. So we don't want to underestimate what Krishna basically has already given us. So this is a very great opportunity, but at the same time, what I'm trying to say is that he can do anything for us if we make ourselves determined. He would practically give us the intelligence for us to make different arrangements despite all the challenges we face. So I was wanting to encourage you to continue feeling guilty because it's positive. Yeah, it's positive for us to feel guilty that we can't do more, which means there is some taste in chanting. And because there's some absorbed chanting and there's some taste in chanting, there's a certain sense of not wanting to give it up because there's some taste. And this is a wonderful thing. So you should just continue to do as much as you can. And then internally, while you're doing other duties, please do meditate on Harinam. Any other question or comment? Okay. What's more important, to build up spiritual credits through various activities or to have developed the qualities of a pure devotee? I believe there are 26 listed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The qualities of a pure devotee are an outcome of spiritual credits that have been accumulated and where those credits themselves are being directly used for the service of the Lord. Spiritual credits can be accumulated and one could develop material desires and accomplish material desires. So it's like saying that the bank has given me a massive loan. I have millions of pounds in the bank and I want to basically take a loan so that I could build some kind of a temple. But then the bank has granted us the loan and then we change our mind and instead we build a massive mansion for ourselves and buy a few cars. This can happen. So it's very important for us to understand that when we engage in devotional service, keep devotional service, the goal of devotional service in perspective. Write down why you're doing what you're doing each and every day. And as you keep doing it and you become better and you come closer and closer to Krishna, which essentially means we become Krishna conscious, the qualities of the devotee, 26 qualities, would just develop automatically. We don't have to endeavor. We have to recognize those exist so that we can educate ourselves as to how the devotee is supposed to behave and what is a practical way to do it. But what is the best thing to do? Focus on devotional service. The qualities would get taken care of on their own. Yeah, the heart basically would move forward. It will take care of its own. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, so there's someone who's writing, even though I tried my level best to be sincere, still I'm facing these bodily challenges. So does this also mean that I have not accumulated enough to continue steadily in devotional service? Not necessarily. If our body becomes sick as a part of the outcome as we progress in devotional service, let's assume that we are chanting sincerely, we are serving the Lord, we're doing our very best, but then we have developed certain complications of the body. And these complications of the body themselves, we have to realize that Krishna is involved. It doesn't mean he's giving us complications, but he is not out of the realm of these complications, which essentially means that whatever happens to us, Krishna is also a part of it. So what we need to do is have an understanding that this is also an arrangement for us to come closer. So this might be an arrangement for you to surrender, because you on your own can't manage, because your body is not giving you the ability to do as much as you want to. So this is an opportunity to surrender, saying that, yes, I have all these desires, but I'm struggling because of my body. And if you could kindly assist, Krishna, give me intelligence so that I would be able to understand what kinds of plans do you have for me. Krishna will give you intelligence. He will open your heart and he will start instructing you either through a book, either through a class, or in different means. He has so many different ways to reach out to you. And he would encourage you and give you information so that you would be able to make progress. So the point I'm trying to make is that Krishna will not give you obstacles in Krishna consciousness. He will not. So we should learn to accept that if I'm living for Krishna and I'm chanting his names and I want to serve him and I'm having some kind of difficulty that I can't handle because I have a problem, then that is also a part of what Krishna has given for us to be able to come closer. It's an opportunity for surrender. So challenges are an opportunity for surrender. Physical challenges where devotees go through illnesses and sicknesses and so on, we shouldn't separate that from the overall objective of getting rid of our prarabdha. What is most fortunate and what is the best way to get rid of prarabdha? That is what Krishna's servants have chosen. So Yogamaya will arrange one way or the other for the devotee to be able to come closer to Krishna by giving an opportunity and also being able to give an opportunity for them to relieve themselves of the prarabdha. What is the most efficient way to do it? They have made a choice. You accept the choice and say, Krishna, this is your arrangement, because nothing can happen to me without you intervening. So you have made this arrangement, but please give me the intelligence so that I would be able to process this. This is Trinadapi Sunichena. Once you start doing Trinadapi Sunichena and accepting each and every day in the morning, saying that this is what it is, Krishna has given me this day, and with all its complications, this is the day that Krishna has given me, then we have the ability to move forward. Because each and every day, we are accepting as his arrangement. It will become his arrangement. Each and every day, as you go through each and every challenge, you will say, okay, this is you, Krishna. You are giving me this. Maybe there's some kind of obstacle. Maybe there's some kind of a subtle attachment that I haven't understood that exists deep within that you're trying to kindly remove so that I can move forward. This is all a karma, but then Krishna is arranging and having us go through some, and he is preventing some from coming. But if he is forcing us to go through something, please understand that that is a part of it. It's a part of what we need to experience to become better servants. Yeah, so that's what we need to understand. You have great devotees. For example, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he left recently due to COVID. So how could you explain that? Yeah, you had great devotees go through all kinds of challenges, through all kinds of, I would say, turbulence personally in devotional service, in being able to render devotional service because of their personal lives. So we can't really remove Krishna from all of this. We have to accept it, saying this is also your arrangement. The moment we accept it sincerely, intelligence will come because that's how it is arranged. This is Krishna's words. I'm going to give you intelligence. Depending on the degree of surrender, I will show you the way to come to me. Yeah. So this basically is arrangement. That's how we have to understand this. But we continue endeavoring. Continue endeavoring. That's key. We don't give up. Any other question or comment? All right. So I think we'll end with this particular question. It's because I don't see any other questions here. Thank you all for participating. If oh this yeah next week onwards, if there is if you're having a challenge in timing, if anybody is facing a challenge in timing, because I'm starting the class at 1 o'clock UK, please let me know if this is an obstacle, and I will think about what I could do to modify this. Yeah, maybe an half hour earlier, perhaps, or an hour earlier, we could make some arrangement. Yeah, I just want to ensure that there isn't too much disturbance in us being able to connect. All right then. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining us.